Welcome back to Leveraging Leadership, where we unpack the art of business leadership. I'm your host, Emily Sander, Chief of Staff turned Executive Leadership Coach. I work with people to help them step into effective leadership and realize their professional and personal goals. If you have known failure and success, if you have had good bosses and bad bosses, if you are a high achiever and want new ideas, and if you want the practical and tactical side of things, then you are in the right place. This show is all about finding your points of greatest influence and leveraging them to better serve those around you. By Jason Cannon. What's up, JC?
Hey, Emily. So happy to be here. I'm so pumped.
This is going to be fun.
Right.
Jason and I work together. So he has helped with speech writing, my story coach. He's a voice coach. And so we know each other well. And I have him on for a number of reasons. First of all, I want to talk about your book, This Above All, which I have read and marked, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube.
You've got several sticky notes in there. Yeah.
There's several good stuff in there.
I take that as a good sign.
It is. And this book is How to Live an Artistic Life. So when I first read this, I'm going to be very honest. You were like, can I send you my book? Because I sent you mine. And I was like, It's about artistry. And I was like, sure. I don't draw. I'm not a dancer. I don't sing, but I'll read this just to humor Jason. It's really good. Like, I'm not just saying that for you in the show. It's really good. I put several stars, which is like my highest kind of margin note in there. And so for business people, I think living artistically, and it's not singing and dancing and drawing and painting, but living artistically is important to incorporate into our repertoire. So definitely want to get into all of that. But first of all, can you just do a quick overview of who you are and what you do? Like, my version is you do playwriting and directing and acting, and you're semi-Shakespearean, but maybe give us the real deal.
Well, I was, my career for 25 years was in the professional theater. So actor, director, playwright, producer. I've stage managed, I've built sets, everything to do with theater. I've done teaching, writing, all of it. As a lot of people did during lockdown, I reassessed. I had more time at home. And even though I still had my job with the theater, I wrote my first thriller novel, and I wrote my first cabaret, and I started writing This Above All. I thought I was writing an acting book, which I've threatened my students for years I was going to do. But then the book took a hard turn. And as I was thinking through this book and then got back into theater after the world opened back up, I just realized I needed to make a shift. I know, Emily, your origin story is kind of similar. There just came a day where you had a realization of, I am happier doing X, Y, Z than ABC. And ABC will always be there, but I got to see what this other path might lead to. So a couple of years ago, I left my full-time theater job, and I've been a writer, editor, ghostwriter, story coach, freelance galore, and now a podcaster. Just kind of, and back to the book, my personal mission is about bringing artistry to anyone where they are, whether I'm teaching memoir, whether I'm teaching fiction, whether I'm teaching playwriting, whether I'm writing a play for somebody, whether I'm helping, like one of my clients right now, she's in dentistry, and she's trying to solve a problem between administration and the actual people who work at the chair. And everything we're working on is, well, what's the story? Mm-hmm. How can the story and the artistry of what you do communicate to your constituents how to fix that gap? So I'm having, and then I get to work with Emily, with you, helping you with all this chief of staff stuff. And so I'm on all these steep learning curves, learning these businesses I knew nothing about just 2 or 3 years ago. And it's a blast. It's so much fun.
I know working with me is the pinnacle of your career, given your illustrious theater career. But to your point about stories, I want to read a little bit of your book here. So you say, stories are delivery systems. A sales pitch is a story. A lawyer's closing argument is a story. A sporting event or the ups and downs of a team's season is a story. A marketing campaign is a story. The arrangement of an end cap display at a grocery store is a story. Showbiz or business biz, we are, all of us, every day, whether you're aware of it or not, telling and listening to stories. And theater is storytelling on steroids.
Right.
So unpack story and artistry for us. So you're talking to business professionals here who might have my initial reaction like, I don't paint, but how can we use being an artist and storytelling in our day-to-day at work?
Stories are delivery systems, by which I mean that story is not what we remember, but it's how we remember at all. Life happens so fast. And depending on your belief system in terms of spirituality, the afterlife, believe what you want, but life is kind of chaotic, right? There's no inherent meaning in the random things that happen to you throughout a day. But when you get to the end of the day and look backwards, that's where we as humans, for millennia, have then carved meaning out of the chaotic moments of the day to create something that means something. We crave that meaning. And the only way we feel that meaning, the only way we become the central character, is if we kind of attach a story and we find the narrative arc through the things that happened, whether at work, at school, at church, with your loved ones, with friends, with your sworn enemies, with whoever, right? That it only makes sense when we package it, deliver it in a story. You hear my dogs? I apologize. I do have the door closed.
It's all good. It's all good. That's a story of your dog. Yeah, there we go.
Yes.
They're telling a story as well.
To the point of the quote you just read, you're in business, right? You're in business and you have to walk into that conference room and convince someone to buy something. How do you do that? You have to, in their mind, create a story that makes them the hero, and that the thing you are selling them is Excalibur, is the thing that will put them over the top, right? Whatever you're doing in business, if you're what was the practice? I think it was Bezos and Amazon. He's famously said that he never allowed PowerPoints in meetings, and he required anyone who was writing the report to come in with a fully typed out narrative report that then everyone would sit quietly and read. The first 10 to 15 minutes of the meeting were all quiet reading, so that everyone had the same story in their mind before they attacked the problems of the day. Because the story is the only thing that makes sense of, I mean, Amazon's huge. How do you make sense of all the moving parts while someone sits down, crafts a narrative that everyone can wrap their hands around?
Something you said is letting someone be the hero of the story, or crafting the story so they are the hero. And I know we're both Ted Lasso fans, and you actually had some commentary about the different seasons and who was the true hero or the focus point of each season. So maybe take us a little bit through Ted's lens and then Rebecca's lens and some different things there.
This is another big thing, and I think especially for your audience, Emily, the chief of staff audience. The chief of staff is the person who's trying to bind everyone and make sure that everyone sees the full picture. How do you do that if you don't put on someone else's lens? So I know you and I are on camera now. If you're listening just to audio, I apologize. I'll describe. Emily and I both wear glasses.
Yeah.
What if I were to take off my glasses and put on Emily colored glasses, even just for a minute? How different would the world look if I assumed for a second that I was not the center of the universe? If I'm not the hero, if I go, you know what, today I'm going to imagine that Emily is the hero and I'm a supporting character. And all of a sudden, the entire world changes, your motivations, your priorities. And by having that level of empathy, you can then bring a much better perspective to your chief of staff work. To bring back to Ted Lasso, I sent out my weekly newsletter this morning, and the thing I shared was that if you go back and watch Ted Lasso, or even not the whole seasons, just watch the very opening shot and very closing shot of each season. Even though the show is called Ted Lasso, season 1 is not about Ted Lasso. He is not the hero of that season. The hero of that season is Rebecca, the boss of the football club that hires him. The opening shot of season 1 is a close-up of her face. The closing shot of season 1 is a close-up of her face. Season 2, same thing. The opening shot of season 2 of Ted Lasso, this is just really smart story structuring by these writers and directors, by the way. Season 2 of Ted Lasso, the opening shot is a super tight close-up of Coach Nate's eye.
Ah, yes.
And the final closing shot of season 2 is a super tight close-up of Coach Nate's eyes. The reason that Nate is the main character of season 2, even though he's in a show called Ted Lasso, is because Nate is the character who changes the most over the course of that season. That's the way to conceptualize it. So if you're a chief of staff going into a meeting, that's a question you can ask yourself. Who is undergoing the most change right now? They are likely to be operating at the highest level or in a place of extreme tension. And how can you help them understand the pressure they're under? So season 2, it's Nate's story. Season 3, finally, opening shot is Ted Lasso's face in the airport with his son. Closing shot is Ted Lasso's face back in Kansas. Closing shot of the series, season 3. So Ted Lasso finally is the main character in season 3 of Ted Lasso. Like think about Return of the Jedi. Think about Star Wars, right? In Return of the Jedi, which Jedi is actually returning? Is it Luke or is it Darth Vader / Anakin?
Ooh.
Who's returning? Is it both? And then if you break down Star Wars, are you talking about 1 movie, 3 movies, 6 movies, 9 movies? The person, the hero changes based on how big the arc is. So if you're just looking at the original 3 movies, it's very much Luke's story. But if you expand it to 6 movies, it's Anakin's story. If you expand it to all 9 movies, I'm not even sure anymore at that point.
But there's like these layers too, because there's the overall series arc, and then there's multiple arcs within that. And to bring that down to like a conference room, well, everyone is looking at things through their lens, and they're the hero in their own story. And so what character arc is your COO going through? What character arc, where are they, is your CFO going through? So being able to tap into all of these character arcs is important.
And if you're working in a business, don't forget too, I mean, I referenced Amazon a couple of times. Amazon as an entity has an arc. There is the epic 9/27/85 million episode arc of Amazon, the company. And inside that, you know, Bezos now, his arc is taking a hard left turn. You know, he's wearing cowboy hats and doing whatever over there. And there's other leadership there now, right? So even within, you got into that conference room, there's the arc of the company under which every single character inside there has their own arcs. Who's been working there 2 years? Who just started last week? Who's been there 10 years? All those arcs are in different places. Everyone's institutional memory has a different depth. And as a chief of staff, that's something that, and again, you don't have to go write a research paper about it, but those are little clues that can help you. It's a people job, right?
Yes.
Being a chief of staff, you're dealing with people. So the more you can understand that each of them views themselves as their own hero in their story, the more you can meet them where they are. Because it's very difficult, especially in high-powered situations, for us to release that idea. Just because I'm the hero of my story doesn't mean I'm the hero of yours. I have to leave the space and grace for you to be the hero of yours. And that can be hard when egos are in play. And that's where the chief of staff has to kind of navigate carefully and make sure everyone's ego is serving the meta arc of the company's story.
I think to that point, though, ego and sometimes persona, right? So when we come to work, we put on our work persona. And so that character and that persona has a certain arc and a certain image and all those things. So sometimes you're working with someone on that level as well.
Yeah. Are you even actually accessing their truest self?
Yes. Let me read one more quote from your book. Everything in theater, and I do mean absolutely everything, is a lie. Everyone knows it, even the audience. They buy a ticket, walk through the lobby, sit in a completely artificial setting. They look at the playbill, see the actors' bios. They know everything they are about to witness is a lie. But they're telling, there's a truth in there, you say. There's a telling of truth. So how do we marry the fact that it's a lie and we're acting and everyone knows it, but it gets to a deeper element of truth in that? That's part of artistry and theater and being an artist.
Think of any commercial. Like if you're in the sales department and you're working with marketing, right? You're creating stories. And in the literal sense, that commercial of that happy family driving the minivan and picking up and going and buying your widget, it's a lie. It's a scenario. It's a little miniature play, right? Those 2 actors you hired, they're not married. Those aren't their kids. They just kind of look like them. They don't own that minivan. That's on loan from the lot down the street. right? His hair is not usually like that. They brought in a hair and makeup artist to make him look good for the camera. It's all a lie. It's all artifice. But, and I'm going to get the quote wrong. Emily, maybe you have it in front of you there, the Pablo Picasso quote, where this comes from, that art is the lie that tells the truth.
Yeah.
We use the artifice to get to the deeper thing. If I'm selling a widget, the truth I'm trying to access through my commercial is that your life will be better if you have this thing in it.
Yeah.
That's the promise I'm making you. And can be fraught with manipulation. That's the thing about these lies. They can manipulate. They are designed to, when I put on a show, I'm trying to make you have feelings. I'm trying to make you be entertained and have an experience that you walk out going, whoa. So there is manipulation that can have positive impact if I'm serving the truth as opposed to serving myself.
Well, I think
that's what you could apply to business too, that if you're serving the customer or your constituents or your company, then all the little lies, the little things that, and I'm using lie in a very technical, literal sense, right?
Well, I've watched plays, I've been to musicals where, yes, I know everything's fake. And I've looked at the playbill and say, oh, this is where this person went to school and this is what other plays she's been in, all this stuff. But there's a moment when the play is happening and there's music and the lights are down and you're with a crowd where you just feel something that's true. And it's not like a heady thing or intellectual. It's like you just feel something that I have felt that in my life, or that keys into something that I've just felt at the heart or soul level. And that's truth. And so they create that even in a very artificial environment.
Even the way you said a musical, I mean, they're singing. It's so fake. It's so fake, right? But in the singing, they're accessing something so emotionally honest.
Yeah.
Right. The great theater quote is that characters break into song when words are no longer enough, and they start to dance when singing is no longer enough. That as we strip language away. So when I speak, I use more words than when I sing. There are fewer words in a song lyric than in a line of speech. Then when I dance, I take language even more away. And it becomes entirely physically expressive. Right? So there's something about truth that we almost can't even put into words. Right? And that's something we can only access through storytelling modalities.
Have you seen the new Baz Luhrmann's Elvis movie?
Oh, I haven't yet. No.
It's good. There's a line in there where Elvis, played by Austin Butler, says something like, "When you're too scared to speak, sing."
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Elvis moved too, clearly. So
yeah. Oh, shake your hips.
So you have a part in your book, and it's about, you use the analogy of a tree representing truth, but then there's leaves that are kind of feelings that people take as the truth and the ultimate truth, but are really just fleeting leaves kind of blowing in the wind. So can you talk us through that piece?
Yeah, as I was writing this book and talking about art and all this stuff, I was trying to figure out a way to, I keep using this word truth, right? And it's so sticky and tricky. And the metaphor that came to mind is that one leaf does not a tree or canopy make. But very often, whether in a boardroom or in the media or on talking head news television, someone comes out and they hold up one leaf, one feeling, and say, this is the entire truth. And that's just, it's hogwash. That's a charlatan. That's someone trying to make easy something that is actually very difficult. I just got fireworks for some reason on my screen. I must be tapping into something true. So my point is that imagine any tree, right? And how many hundreds or thousands of leaves are on there, right? Humans are messy. We feel multiple things throughout the day. We feel conflicting emotions at different times, all the time. We are feeling creatures who think. We are not nearly as rational as we like to pretend we are. So if every leaf is fluttering and bouncing sunlight, and like Emily, you're in Washington, I'm in Florida, we see the sun differently, right? The sun is in a different place in our sky. You are much further north and west. The tilt of the earth as we go through the seasons, the way the light refracts, the time of day. If you set your alarm for sunrise, That changes every day.
Yeah.
So the point being, I say this way better in the book. I'm trying to condense something that was like 3 chapters.
Go
worth
get
of
the
like-
book, people. Go get the book.
The offering I'm trying to make is that the grace to give to yourself and to other people is that inside you are thousands of leaves, and all of them are fluttering at the same time. They're all different feelings. Your feelings don't lie to you, but your feelings also are not the truth. I really resist it when someone says to me, well, I feel like this is true. I'm like, I don't care. That is not evidence. That is not proof. Living
Leaf
artistically.
isn't the tree. The leaf
sure.
is in the trunk of your tree.
Right. And even the tree itself, the truth, as I dig up in the book, is actually the wind. There's a force inside the wind that flutters the leaves. And the artistic life is trying to grasp the wind. What is the thing behind the thing behind the thing?
Yes.
Right. So living artistically is a constant interrogation of yourself. It's a constant reflection on what I'm feeling, why I'm feeling it, what I do with those feelings. I always get to choose what I do with my feelings.
Yes.
My feelings are not your fault. My feelings are my responsibility, ever and only. Ever and only. And that, I would say, is completely applicable to dealing with people in a boardroom, in a workplace.
Yeah.
You know, there's interoffice spats. Conflict is inevitable in a workplace. The feeling will happen. That's okay. I'm in no way advocating for turning them off. That's simply impossible. But you are responsible for what you decide to do with the feeling after you felt it.
And I think what I'm hearing you say is you're responsible for identifying truth from feeling in the first place and not holding up your leaf and saying it's the wind, it's the truth. And then you are, if you're listening to this, you're of age, you're an adult. So what do I do with that in some responsible, mature way?
Yeah.
And you're interacting with other people, and you've got, your tree is growing, you've got new branches, you've got new trees, it's different seasons, new leaves are coming, they're falling off. All these things are happening. So it's a dynamic process that's never.
And again, that's not to say that truth changes or that it's a moving target. Truth just is.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that changes, the thing that is subjective, is us.
Yeah.
We are the ones with limited perceptions. And all we can do is the best we can do.
Yeah.
But this is something you like to say, Emily, that when everyone works at the top of their game, we all win. And I'm advocating for the same thing here. It's the same idea that if everyone is truly, honestly, with humility, trying to figure out the truth, then we can get along, that will be okay. And we'll even create moments of artistry and beauty, which could be like the perfect marketing campaign, or it could be the perfect hire, or whatever, right? But it takes that level of self-interrogation, self-reflection, grace to other people to let them have the space to self-interrogate and reflect. Don't expect someone else to immediately have the answer. You rarely have the answer immediately. So it comes down to treat someone else the way you wish they treat you, or treat someone else the way they wish to be treated. It's kind of the same idea.
Yeah.
But that's the only way truth will ever be accessed. I'm going to murder this quote by G.K. Chesterton, but I love the idea is that we can stick our heads into the heavens, but if we try to squeeze the heavens into our heads will split.
That's a great quote. That's a great quote. I've never heard that one before. Speaking about truth and artistry, there's this little cool trivia, I guess you have in your book around iambic pentameter and like the beat of it. And it goes da 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 da. And something else does that. What else does that?
All right, so I'm going to nerd out for just a second here on poetry. Shakespeare famous, and he's not the only one to write in this. Iambic pentameter. It is just it's a type of poetry. All right, and IAMB is just a foot. It's a foot of a beat of poetry, and it goes soft, hard, ba-bum. Pentameter means there's 5, penta, 5. There's 5 feet per line. So a line of Shakespeare or any poet or playwright who was writing in iambic pentameter, 5 feet of 2 beats would sound like ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. The reason Shakespeare wrote in that is because it actually is the closest lyrical approximation to normal human speech. that the length of a thought is around 10 to 20 beats, and that the rhythm of the words we tend to in English, that's very much a tendency. So Shakespeare goes, ba-bump, 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 ba-bump. The other thing that every single human being has that also does that is your heart. Ba-bump, 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 ba-bump. Shakespeare is not some highfalutin guy that is only accessible by the wise, esoteric few. Shakespeare belongs to all of us because Shakespeare wrote for all of us. He wrote some of the filthiest comedy you will ever see. He wrote some of the most brilliant lines you'll ever hear. And the reason it works for all of us is because all of us inside us, we all have moments where we're brilliant, and we all have moments where we're gross. All humans are both.
Yes.
And Shakespeare knew that. And then he would often put a clown scene right next to a wise scene. The dramatic scene and the comic scene would just gear shift hard. That's the human experience. And it comes back to the way we hear it. Shakespeare's inside you.
Yeah.
I don't mean the person. I just mean the idea.
Yes, but when I read that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's why it kind of like hits you, kind of like at that fundamental level." Like it's
That's why too. Most actors will tell you Shakespeare is one of the easiest things to memorize. It's rhythmic. It's musical. It's like there's no other way to say the line than the way it's written because of that rhythm.
So that leads me into, why is Polonius not funny? So your book is called
This is like a 4-chapter chunk of the book.
I know. This is your book is called This Above All. That's a line from a Shakespeare play.
Yes.
And it's a interaction or exchange with Polonius and his son, I believe. So I know I'm asking you to break down a lot, but break this one down for us.
This Above All comes from Hamlet. Polonius is talking to his son, Laertes, and Polonius is he's usually played as this doddering, foolish old man who's giving like a bunch of fatherly advice. And he says to his son, "This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man." Very often in our modern world, that quote gets cut down to just "to thine own self be true."
Yes.
That's the whole thought, period. No, there's actually a comma there and it keeps going. "To thine own self be true" is proof texting. It's cherry picking. It is saying very often that it's interpreted as you don't know me, you don't know my life. I can do whatever I want as long as I'm true to myself. Well, no, not the point. The point of "to thine own self be true," the line continues, "and it must follow as the day, the night. Thou canst not then be false to any man." The point of this advice is that you have to be truthful. If you can be true to yourself, that is actually the question, the actual inferred question is, how do I not be false to anyone else? That's what's actually being answered. Be true to yourself, and then you can't be false, right? But the point isn't about you. The point is about other people being able to trust you. So it's other focused. Now, to your point about Laertes, to your point about Polonius, as I said, he's often played as this kind of dumb old guy, punching down, judging the boomer, right? Whatever. And that direction, that actor choice completely misses the point. And I break this down in the book way, way, way more deeply. But by punching down on the character, by an actor or a director judging Polonius, you'll lose any sense of the father-son relationship. You lose any sense of the depth of that advice, which is so true and so useful. If you try to play Polonius funny, he's not funny. But if you play Polonius honest, he's pretty dang funny. There's a classic theater story about this where in rehearsal, and it was a piece of sketch comedy, in rehearsal, an actor's line was to ask for the butter. "Please pass me the butter. Just pass me the butter." That was their line. In the rehearsal, it got a huge laugh. And then in performance, they said the line, "Pass the butter," and no laugh. And the actor afterwards went to the director and said, "What happened? I killed on "pass the butter" in rehearsal." And the director says, well, in rehearsal, you asked for the butter. And in performance, you asked for the laugh.
Oh,
You put the focus on yourself instead of on the action. You lied. Even though the butter is false, even though the story is false, even though you're not really that character, you didn't tell the truth when you asked for the butter. You had that meta, I'm an awesome, hilarious actor, selfish ego thing going on, and you asked for the laugh, and therefore you didn't get it because the audience can smell falsehood a mile away.
and I think that translates directly into business because we've
Oh,
all had
yeah.
opportunities where like I can do this thing because of the perception or it'll make me look good or let me do this thing to get the react. Oh, like no, like I for the team first. Like I'm all about service, blah blah. But praise me. When it was like, let me just do the thing because I'm like past the butter. Like let me just do the thing because it needs to be
Yeah.
done. So the truth in that and being true to that. Ooh, that's a good story. Let me read two more quick quotes that I love these ones. So if you can change one life, you can change the world. That's a powerful quote. It's followed up by, you don't know when, you don't know who, you don't know how, but in case there's a person in the back of the theater, you got to be performing for them and showing up for them. And I think I took that as, oh, I've had so many times in my business career where I didn't even know someone was listening to me. I didn't even know I was making an impression, but later, years later, they'll come up to me and say, Emily, when you did this, when you said this, and I was like, oh my gosh, I should have paid attention more. I should have showed up more. I didn't think anyone was there.
Yeah.
So if you can change one life, you can change the world, and you don't know when that's going to happen.
And you know what? If you were aware, the pressure would be debilitating. It's amazing how often, whether you're a boss, a teacher, a mentor, a coach, what you think you're communicating is very rarely what is actually being taken in. Even in the book, I had this whole chapter telling a story about this time I came home from college and I, confronted my dad about a piece of something in the Bible or whatever. And his piece of advice to me was, so what? And it opened up that to me opened up a whole new world of interrogation and questioning and not just taking my own feeling as the truth. But when I shared that chapter with my dad, he was like, I remember that story, but that's what you took from what I told you. He was like heartbroken that I didn't remember the other wonderful things he had said. He was like, I can't believe that's the only thing you remember from what I told you that day.
Good job.
That's the thing. We have to be okay. We have to put our ego aside, have the humility to accept that the other person is the star of their show.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to hear us maybe in a way we don't even know. And especially if you're performing for an audience, you don't know those people individually. They're all going to come. And even though it's a singular audience, that's a collective noun and it's individuals. And who knows where each of those people are emotionally, what they're ready to receive. You can't control it. You can't control it. You just got to scatter the seed and what grows, grows.
Yet you're co-creating that moment with the audience. And this there's another quote from your book, which is, each single performance is a particular combination of audience members that will only exist one time. And because it's a live show, even your performance, no matter how skilled or rehearsed you are, will only be that performance once. It's moonlight in your hands.
Yeah.
And in the margin, next to that quote, I was like, I wrote, life is a live show.
Oh, that's really good. There are no retakes in real life, Emily.
You're live right now. If you're listening to this, you're a live show right now. It's called your life. Life is a live show. And you're constantly creating those moments with people, whether you know it or not.
Yeah. And again, whether you're at work, at home, again, if you expand the idea of what performance is, and not performance in terms of being fake, like you said, at work, but you go into if you're going to do a presentation, if you are hired and your job is to travel around to the various, branches and give this presentation, that's a performance. And each collection of people is a different audience. And even though you're giving the same script and showing the same PowerPoint and giving out the same swag bags, each one of those will be singular unto itself. And your amount of control over it is far less than you think. And thank goodness that is true.
And in that way, it's freeing. It's like, all right, well, if that's the case, let me just do my thing. It's freeing.
Yep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Let it go. Yeah, let it go.
How does a director or writer feel opening night?
Terrified.
So
Completely terrified.
So on June
Um,
21st, how will you be feeling when you go to New York to see the preview of your off-Broadway show?
Oh, thanks for the plug, Emily. That's right. So I have a show going off Broadway this summer, and even though it's a show that I wrote and directed last year, it's another production and opening night, and it's going to be terrifying. There's a moment. I'm going to back that up because a writer and a director have similar but different experiences. Because the writer has given the play away earlier. The writer has usually the writer has almost no control over the production, unless they're invited in to be a part of it, especially if they've done a world premiere. But usually a writer has no control over what that theater decides to do with their play. They have to say every line, but they can design it how they want, cast it how they want, direct it how they want. Playwriting is a huge exercise in letting things go. The director has been the most important person in the room for months. For months, every decision is coming through the director. The control, pulling all the strings. Everyone comes to you for anything they need. It's very much a chief of staff role, bringing together all of the designers, all of the actors, and the production, the marketing, bringing them all together in pursuit of one singular goal. The director is the chief of staff, guiding everyone towards the opening night. There is a moment on the final day of rehearsal where that rehearsal ends and the cast leaves to come back to do opening performance that night. And the director, in an instant, goes from having all the power in the room to having none. Immediately, the entire enterprise has shifted from creation to replication. So that night, all the actors, stage managers, crew, they come back and they go to work. They have to do the play. The director comes back that night and just hides in the lobby.
With their air sickness bag.
Sweats profusely, has no control, zero control over what happens. So think about that, going from, in a split second, Emily, from having literally all the control to none. So that's why opening night, I said, no matter how confident you are, no matter, you can know you directed the hell out of that play, but oh man, when it starts, all you can think about is, oh man, all this, oh, I messed it, oh no, oh no, oh geez. All you think about is what's going wrong.
How do I stop this train?
Exactly. Take my name off. And that's true of it. That's true of most directors.
Well, you and I have
I've only
talked
had
about
one or
it.
two productions where I was so confident and so just like completely trusting the entire enterprise. I was like, this is going to be good. Audience is going to love this. Now they will just sit.
You and I have talked about it, and I'm going to try to be there on that night when you're going through there. So I'm going to try to come out for the first preview, even if it's like a fly to New York, see your play, don't even stay in a hotel, jump on a plane, go back. But
Red Eye.
Yeah, I'm going to be there to support you. I'm so excited for you. Tell people a little bit what it's about, the title and the one-man play and all that stuff.
This show is called Clowns Like Me. It is a one-man show, very much in the vein of, if you're listeners, if you've ever watched like Mike Birbiglia or Hannah Gadsby or Neil Brennan or Chris Gethard, there's a lane of stand-up comedy these days that is folding into vulnerable storytelling, using personal stories and lived experience and even trauma to do one-person theater. Mike Birbiglia is genius at this. His stuff is comedy and storytelling and theater all at the same time. And this show is based very much in that lane. My actor, his name is Scott Ehrenpreis. And Scott, he's about my age. He's a professional trained actor. He works professionally as an actor, but he has lived his whole life with a collection of mental illnesses. He's on the autism spectrum. He has social anxiety, depression, OCD. I'm not talking out of pocket here. He's attempted suicide twice. We addressed it in the play. So the play does get very heavy, but it's also full of humor and light and hope. And the play is very much his coming out. He's telling his story of living with mental illness and letting people know, hey, you're not alone. And this is a real thing. And we have to have grace for ourselves and for each other. So the play is, the mission of the play is to dent the stigmas around mental illness and just get that conversation going. But it's also just seriously entertaining. I told Scott over and over, we have to entertain first. Otherwise, no one will care. We're not doing a TED Talk. We're doing a play. So we did a world premiere. Basically, I spent about 8 months interviewing Scott and visiting his condo over and over, just pulling stories out and interviewing his parents. And his dad actually is the producer on the show.
Yeah.
And yeah, we had this amazing sold out Critical Smash run last year. Had to bring it back for an extra run due to popular demand. We filmed it. It's won a couple of film festivals, and it's actually going to be in the Sarasota Film Festival. I'm not sure when this will air, but on April 7th. And then it just kept snowballing. We met a producer, and now we have an off-Broadway production this summer at the DR2 Theater in Union Square, New York. As Emily said, it's previews June 21, opens June 30, runs through August 18. And we're partnering with New York, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and some suicide prevention hotlines and some other groups like that, just to get the word out and just to build a buzz to get the mission out there that mental health needs to be taken seriously.
Mm-hmm. So I know we have a number of listeners that are actually in New York. So say that again, June 21st at which theater?
Yes. The DR2. And if you go to clownslikeme.com, it's all there.
Okay. And so if they want to know more about it, and also if they want to support the project and fund getting you guys and equipment and the crew to New York, is that where they go as well?
Oh yeah, we're doing this as a nonprofit model. It's not commercial. So donations are very much still welcome.
Very cool. And then you have just launched a new podcast, Page to Stage. So that's, I think, 3 episodes in at the time of recording.
So Zan, I've got another half dozen interviews in the can that I'm editing, and we'll be dropping every Thursday morning. But yeah, it's at if you go to pageandstage.art, that's pageandstage.art. You can access my newsletter there, my podcast, my publishing company, Ibis Books.
What is that podcast about, real quick?
We explore the art and craft of writing and performance. So I do deep dive interviews with actors, directors, memoirists, best-selling authors, anyone who is a professional storyteller of any kind. And we just dig into how to become a storyteller. What does it mean to tell a story? How do you deal with your audience? What's your process? And really just very much like what I do with my book and what we've been talking about a bit, just dig into the power of story and art to transform an audience.
And so you also coach people. So if someone's listening to this saying, you know, I'm not in theater, I'm not an off-Broadway, but I do tell stories and I want to become better at that and maybe tap into that artistic side. I'm remembering my point from earlier, which is we're performing, not in the fake way, but we're performing because we're an artist, but it's to connect with truth in whatever moment we're in. So I think if someone is listening saying, you know, I'm kind of going through the motions and I'm kind of doing this artificial stuff, but I want to be able to capture my message and what I'm about and convey that so people think they're the hero of the story and they're hearing that in their own storyline, they can contact you and you can help them with that.
Yes.
So where would they go to find out more information?
It was kind of a surprise when I left the theater that very much kind of this memoir, keynote speech, TED Talk lane. I've worked with a lot of people on that kind of storytelling. And if you go to my personal website, which is Jason Cannon, so many websites, jasoncannon.art, you can hit me up directly right there.
We'll have all this in the show notes. So just go to those show notes and you'll have everything you need. And Jason, I think we probably should come back for another episode and just do some of the actual speech, like technical speech pieces, because I think it would be fun for people to hear a Shakespeare actor, or someone who's been in Shakespearean plays, do a warm up. So we can take them through that for maybe round 2.
We can talk about how, that becoming better at speaking is not just a technical skill. It makes you a clearer communicator all the way through. It changes the way you think.
And
literally.
It's, I mean, you and I have done like a smidge of this, not full actor blown, but like moving your tongue and mouth and throat and like using your body to project your voice in a natural way. It makes a world of difference. When you can tap into that, it changes how you literally speak. So that could be round 2.
So we'll pitch the next episode we haven't recorded yet. But yeah, again, I go back to if you're giving a speech, if you're doing a presentation, a sales pitch, whatever, the sound of your voice, the clarity of your speech matters. The way that your story is received. Again, the words themselves, the sound, the gestures, your control of your breath. your clarity, all of that, even though it's technical, has a direct emotional value to the listener,
Yes.
to the potential customer, right? So that's why it's also, it's way beyond technical. It's super practical.
All right. So we pitched that for round 2. So Jason will be back. But Jason, thank you so much for stopping by and dropping all your knowledge. Go pick up This Above All. It's available wherever you get books. Go check out Clowns Like Me in New York. And then Page to Stage is Jason's podcast. So Jason, thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily. What a blast.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.